Hello, this is Dano, and I'm here with my co-host, Toddy Walker, and partner and friend. We're back to talk about music, and specifically good music. That always brings on a lot of conversations about what does good music really mean, and we'll continue to entertain conversations around that. I don't know, Toddy. We've got topics during the night
good
that we're
music
going to cover.
is
Go
what
ahead.
we like. Good music is what we like. And pretty much, once again, am I wrong?
You're never wrong, man. I mean, when it comes to music, it's like
That's
food.
right.
You're
Damn
never
right.
wrong. If you say you like sushi and everybody else says they don't, you're not wrong. You ask me,
I don't know about.
wait a minute.
I ain't eating dead fish.
Okay, so we'll go to a
I'll
different
listen to
example.
fucking country before I eat dead fish.
Well, there's always that opportunity. But my point is, you're never wrong when it comes to music.
No, I
You may
agree.
not may not align with what I find to be good music. We've talked about our attempts to create some kinds of qualifiers around that, and wherever you look, there's going to be exceptions, and quality of the music is in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately, in my mind. And it's just my mind, Lil Wayne will never be in the eye of this beholder as quality music, but that doesn't mean that other people won't find a ton of reasons to find something exciting, redeeming, with that music.
Exciting, maybe. Redeeming, come on now.
Well, I'm Toddy. I'm trying to be open-minded here. I'm trying.
There
to
you go. All right.
But, tonight we'll keep trying to refine that idea of good music. I've got a story I want to tell you about a band called Dire Straits that I think is pretty entertaining. And then we'll get into the fact that there are bands that have bridged the gap. If Toddy and I define the gap as, not the gap, but the golden era as, 1968, what was the end, Todd?
1983.
1983. So if we continue to say that's the quote golden era, there have been a lot of bands that have transitioned between before and after, before 83 and after 83. And we'll talk some about those as well.
All right. Well, and there were some that obviously prior to 68, probably, how can I put this? I'm going to be on my playlist repetitively, but
Yeah.
the Beatles, the Stones, hell, even Pink Floyd began before 68, but they
I
all
agree.
moved through that. So, but for me, 68 to 83, what happened in those 15 years are unequaled,
Well,
regardless of what came after or before.
yeah, and Tony, I don't think you're out on a limb there in making that claim. Yeah, something that you and I have been talking about, and that will be a part of this podcast in the future, is the notion that there's this 50th anniversary thing that's going on with bands that are celebrating, repeatedly bands celebrating this whole 50th anniversary of this release or that release or our first release or whatever. But they're showing up on concerts, in concerts, constantly now, whether it's Toto or Doobie Brothers, or I want to save that for another podcast, but I'm just saying there's this 50-year relationship that seems to exist between where we are and the hunger that people feel today for the music that was going on 50 years ago. And that was in the middle of the golden era. So let me get
absolutely.
into...
Like I said,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, once again, think about the bands that over the course of your lifetime that you've had, maybe, like I said before, maybe you didn't go, but you had an opportunity to see them live.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start running down that list, you're talking absolutely some of the greatest bands ever. It's a pretty incredible time period.
Well, especially given, like I said, Tony, the fact that 50 years later, people are still clamoring to hear an ELO live, or to hear those litany of bands that we will bring up on the next podcast. Not a podcast, it's a podcast.
That's right.
It could be though, but I'm just saying.
It's funny you say that about the 50 years. We went and saw George Thorogood, and what was it? His 50th anniversary tour, and he was, might I say, bad to the bone.
And
How was that?
He was, and I think just recently you've been to see someone that could qualify greatly as being from that golden era, and now 50 years later, you're still experiencing a David Byrne.
And I'm here to tell you that was the absolute most incredible, or one of the most incredible concerts I've ever been to in my life. It was 1/3 concert, 1/3 freaking Broadway play, 1/3 stand-up comedy. The guy was incredible. It went with Trent, who is 5 years old, and
Trevor
shares the same appreciation for David Byrne's quirkiness. The dude is just delightfully weird, man. And you don't get that anymore. He is real. Yeah, it might be the best way I know how to describe him. He's real.
Well, and your tie into Trent, though, makes me chuckle, because there was a point in time where, as I recall it, Tiny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you inquired upon me, or I would say told me, that Trent had inquired upon you, Dad, who else did you know that liked Talking Heads? And the answer was Dano.
And that pretty much was it. But think about it. You know, when we were running the roads of Dothan, say from 1977 to 82, you know, and granted, at 82 we kind of took a different path, but we got to the same place. We just went in a different way. But anyhow, who else was riding around listening to Talking Heads? John, you know, maybe, but
there weren't many of us, I'll tell you that.
No, and once again, it goes back to, for whatever reason, the exposure that you got in Dothan to any and all. Forevermore grateful. And you know, and it's like the thing I sent you today on the concerts at the Dothan Civic Center.
Yeah.
When you start looking at the list of, and like I told you, incredible as it was, you know, from when it opened in, 74 until, you know, we were both had gone from Dothan by, say, 84. That 10-year period, oh my gosh, everything from AC/DC, Rush, to Seals and Crofts, and Pablo Cruz, and everything freaking in between.
I know.
But once you rolled into the 90s, I don't know if you looked at that list, but it started dropping. And by the time you got into the 2000s, there wasn't anybody worth a shit showing up.
What Tiny, think about it. It's not like there was a whole bunch of plums to pick off of that tree at that point in time.
There you go.
You go back earlier and you think about the bands that came through the Dothan Civic Center, many of which I didn't know because I was just too young or too stupid to know they were coming through or why it was important they were coming through, to the ones that I enjoyed and you enjoyed and experienced in a way that we talked about on earlier podcasts. That damn show that included Mother's Finest and Blackfoot and AC.
Yeah.
Where do you go from that? But okay, I'm trying to find my way to segue into this whole Dire Straits conversation because it's a subset of the bigger picture of bands and music that extended past. They started during that golden era and they extended past that golden era. And in some cases, Talking Heads, you ended up with David Byrne at the end of it. And he's done some amazing work to include the music that was played at the concert that Todd talked about earlier. Dire Straits, similar situation, Mark Knopfler, and extending past the work of Dire Straits. But just Dire Straits, I go back and I look at the time frame and that period of your life this music was dropping in and how it affected you. 10th grade. I mean, we had just gotten out of the 10th grade, Toddy, when the first Dire Straits album dropped.
Yeah.
It was June of 78. And oh my gosh, from the first time I heard Sultans of Swing, I was never the same person. It affected me, seriously. And I enjoyed it. And it was a part of many trips to Panama City Beach. It was like just a foundation of what you heard if you were going to be out on the beach during spring break, throwing frisbees, playing football, and whatever.
And that debut record has to be one of the great first albums, any genre, any band, anytime. But here's my thing, and like the Talking Heads, Dire Straits was something different than anything else out there at the time.
Yeah.
When they bust onto the scene, you cannot tell me a band that they were similar to.
No, they were not.
Therein lies, I think, what draws us in. Can't speak for nobody else, but just that it was different. It was good. Like I said, there was something there.
It caught my ear and it moved me.
Never let go.
Emotionally, man. It was like you said, nothing else like it that I had heard. And suddenly I've got something that musically, and let me pause for just a second here. Audience, Dottie and I had been comparing notes earlier about our earliest experiences with music and when those kind of came in and caused that awakening in us. 1972, 73, we don't necessarily have to get into the details of months, but I'm just saying that it was an 11-year-old, 12-year-old time frame that this medium.
And what I found interesting is that we both pointed to the absolute same time.
Yeah.
Fourth, fifth grade, 1972. Well, you're old fucks, and you were born in, 61.
I
was born in 62. The point there was, to me, that pretty much proved at least the point for you and I. And it was unrehearsed. It was, it started with the song Photograph by Ringo Starr.
Just sharing a story.
And going back to, I remember that song. Fifth grade at Selma Street Elementary School, and that was the first moment that I literally kept searching a radio dial trying to find a specific song. Now, didn't have a whole lot of radio stations to pick from. You went from 514.
You DIG and Wolf.
And what was it? The radio airwaves battle between the two. Wolf would always, we don't let you down a half a mile out of town.
And Sundown.
And WDIG would fire back with, we may let you down a half a mile out of town, but we don't let you down at sundown.
Exactly.
That's gold, man.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of WDIG, and one night, I don't know how we were, probably
Wait a minute.
12.
How did you work a connection between WDIG and John?
Well, I'm getting to it at all. And John had this idea that if we rode our bicycles out to WDIG at night, that we could get on the radio. And so one of them camping out in the neighborhood, everybody, we strike out at midnight.
That's a bad
pedaling out to the circle, age 12, go to WDIG, bang, Preston T, the disc jockey, opens it up. Now, he does not let us on the air, but he at least let us in to watch. And it was such a cool, to me, it always reminded me of the scene in American Graffiti where, I don't know what the dude's name is, but he goes and he talking to Wolfman Jack, but he doesn't realize it. And he lets him in the radio station. What a great scene in a cool movie, man. But anyway, back to Dire Straits. Yeah, I'll get sidetracked pretty easily. But once again, with Straits, every album was different.
Well, and that was, you're...
All right. Now...
I don't Don't want to interrupt you, Toddy, but that was
Well, but
really where I was
let
focused
me.
on.
I'm gonna have to run, hit pause or whatever it is you do. Let me go grab something. I'll be right back.
And here we are during the great pause because Toddy is going to come back with something existential. I'm absolutely certain of it. He doesn't do this unless it's going to result in something existential. Mark me. And he's back. This has got to be epic. You think you are. Okay.
I thought, shit, that is gonna be pissed. This somebody's fixing to die. This,
Anybody, unless somebody dies.
oh, that would suck. And so, all right. So while we're on Dire Straits, what is your favorite album?
Well, let me just, I got a whole sequence here I want to run through. Okay.
All right.
So let me just do that. So going back to, and I'll hit your favorite in a minute, but just okay. Between the 10th grade, and I'm going to relate this to the timeline of our lives, the royal we. Between 10th grade and 11th grade, for folks like me and Toddy, Dire Straits' first album was released with Sultans of Swing being the lead-off single from that, which was the thing that I had never heard anything like and latched onto, not because everybody else liked it, which seems to be the case today. It seems like people like what everybody else likes. Nobody else liked Dire Straits when I picked up that song, and it was just, holy shit. Okay, so Panama City Beach. Remember, I said June of '78. Panama City Beach. Oh my gosh, the whole summer. Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. And then you come back to the second album, Communicate. Man, between the 11th grade and the 12th grade. That was June of '79. But follow with me here, okay? So we got one coming out before the 11th, one coming out between the 11th and the 12th grade, if you're following along from a
Chronological. Yeah.
yeah, and then you get into, oh my goodness, now we're getting ready to graduate. Making Movies comes out 1980, and it was actually October of '80. So we've graduated, man. We're out on our own. We're doing our cool, crazy stuff, and Making Movies is out there being a part of the soundtrack of our lives. Yeah, and then we hit the good part. Between '82 and '83, September of '82, Love Over Gold.
There you go.
So
there you go.
You got an album that took a bunch of guys, and honestly, the foundation of that group of guys was Mark Knopfler. He was the driving force.
No doubt.
You might not could have said it in 1982, but you can say it now. He was the driving force. And so you got Love Over Gold. And all of a sudden there's an entirely different perspective on this band called Dire Straits. And you're starting to realize that this is something a little different than your average run-of-the-mill label favorites that we're going to promote and make a lot of money from. These were guys that were artists and were putting out music that was artistically crystalline.
You just nailed it, because with Love Over Gold, I think for the masses, Mark Knopfler's greatness was realized with that record. I think he is probably the best fingerstyle guitar player ever, especially in rock. Had that, I don't know, unique ability to play melody, notes, all at the same time.
Yeah, but at the same time,
but his greatness,
go ahead.
His greatness was defined with that record. Now, it was already there, but when Love Over Gold dropped, that's when you sat back and went, holy shit.
That's when it was cemented, yeah.
And I look no further than Telegraph Road. It starts just a slow, melodic little journey that just continues to build and build and
slow
build.
Burn.
And then it reaches this guitar crescendo, I'll call it. The last, 4 minutes of that song are absolutely blistering.
Well, they're Tony, yes, they're blistering. They are 4 minutes of music history. And I don't care who wants to debate that. I'll debate it with them.
Yes,
That was 4 minutes of music history.
I agree. And that's one of those that if somebody feels otherwise, you know,
Well, I'm willing to at least debate it with them, but I understand what you're
no,
saying, man.
don't waste your time
Yeah.
with morons.
But okay, and then you go on. So one of the terms that I had assigned to qualifying, not quantifying. I don't know how you do that, but qualifying good music was longevity. And boy, this, if nothing else, this podcast has caused both myself and I think Todd to really think about some of the things that we throw around and some of the opinions that we throw around and some of the ideas and some of the perspectives that we throw around. And the longevity piece of it is one that's tough for me because it was intended to say it's not a one and gone kind of musical event. It has some longevity in terms of its impact and how it impacts people across time. And I don't know how to turn that into the corrected version of longevity, but I honestly feel like that
I've got
between,
something to interject. I think
please,
that the use of the phrase longevity has gotten distorted. And hear me out. You said this earlier about everybody embarking on these 50th anniversary tours or the 50th anniversary of this record.
right,
So that timeline, 50 years, has gotten ingrained in your psyche. But in all bands, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, they're kind of the exception. Yeah, let's face it, bands don't have normally that damn long of a lifespan. Come on. And not to knock the Stones. I mean, Sympathy for the Devil for me is one of the best songs ever. But come on, they just go out and they regurgitate the same damn stuff every tour. It's nothing new,
right.
but people love to hear it, so they keep playing. And kudos to them. But I think that causes us to think longevity is 25, 30, 40, 50 years when really for a band, just say you hit, I'll use, let's say REM. They've come out, early 80s, wrapped it up, 92, 93, give or take.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
But
long period of time, and they were damn good.
but okay. So the phrase you used, wrapped it up. All right. So maybe that's where they quit recording, producing, creating new music.
Yes.
But how long does the influence of REM last? How does the longevity of a band reflect how
Great point.
long? And so,
They don't. Yes, they don't necessarily have to be making new music as long as their influence is alive.
and yes, and in certain cases, like Dire Straits, you have a guy like Mark Knopfler. That I'm an engineer, and so I see this as I'm visualizing this as literally a capsule being ejected off of a rocket. And Mark Knopfler, once Dire Straits was done, went on to create some of the most amazing music that I've ever heard. I got a show and tell here, Donnie, that I want to bring up, and this one.
Nice.
So this is a boxed vinyl and CD set that was released in April of 23. Mark Knopfler. You'd never confuse it with Dire Straits, but my damn, the passion that man puts into his music is something that I don't know many other places to find. Help me, Toddy.
Well, when you have that ability, okay, he can kind of move seamlessly in whatever it is he wants to play. And my point there is we can go from Telegraph Road to the Notting Hillbillies and playing alongside Chet Atkins. Or his duet work with Emmylou Harris is phenomenal. That's when, for me, realized, holy crap, he's one hell of a singer as well. He's just an artist in every sense of the word. And if you don't like him, I'm probably not going to like
I got
you.
a little use for you.
That pretty much sums it up. Yeah, absolutely.
The his collaborations, his solo work, the box set that I just exposed is just a continuation of the evolution and the maturation of a man that has grown up with me and a lot of others that I know that were initially Dire Straits fans and ultimately followed Knopfler into his solo work and into the Notting Hillbillies and ultimately into that box set that I just showed you. But that's the kind of music that overcomes time. It is a continuation of something that started in 1978 and, as far as I know, is still alive today.
No, there's any doubt. And I, for one, am grateful that it is. Because once again, not saying that there's not good stuff out there. We've determined that there is. And that's one thing this show has forced me to do is what is out there. And we've said it over there. There's good stuff. You got to find it. But somebody like Knopfler, who has, as you would say, endured over that time, you can't deny greatness, man. Whether it's whatever the genre, great is great.
And yeah, and as we sit here on a podcast and talk about good music, and that's our tagline, good music. If a guy like Knopfler doesn't exemplify that to you, I don't know of anything that we could say that would, because it again, going back to Dire Straits and extending out until the box set that I just showed you. I just don't know how you can look for a better example of what that transition looks like between the golden era and today.
Well put. Yeah, I agree with that. And the fact that he's still doing stuff and actually new stuff solidifies his place as an artist. And not just somebody who, like I said, keeps just regurgitating the same stuff over and over.
Oh yeah.
He's constantly.
You okay?
Yeah.
I thought you choked yourself for a minute, man. But yeah, the whole idea, that okay, so all of these quote 50th anniversary bands that are out there that are touring and satisfying an appetite that people clearly have for the music that was part of this golden era that we're talking about.
Let me interject this. I've just looked up something. Okay, the calendar's fixing to flip to 2026. So, thinking, what albums come out in 1976 that will be 50 years old this next year? Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, Desire by Bob Dylan, Frampton Comes Alive, A New World Record by ELO, Agents of Fortune, Blue Extra Cult, The Royal Scam, Steely Dan, Silk Degrees by Skaggs, which is freaking fabulous. And I'm just, like I said, swings
You're
at the
just skipping off
sound.
the top, man. You're just skipping off the top of a list of why we keep talking about this time frame.
Night Moves, The Pretender, Left Overture by Kansas. So it just, and when you think about Hotel California, there's another one. All these that will turn 50 in this next year. How many of them did you have?
Yeah. And how many of them can you see on tour today? Because everybody is hungry for it.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, in the last a little more than a year, I've seen Yellow, David Byrne, Thorogood. I'm probably leaving somebody out. I'd have to, and there's been some that's hit stages that just hadn't been able to make.
Right.
When you start thinking about it, you use the phrase hungry. That, and I don't disagree. I think that is a big part of it. But also, when we hear these bands, whether it's Fleetwood Mac or Aerosmith or whomever, which, by the way, Rocks came out, I think, in 76 as well. Or it might have been Toys and Attic. Don't matter.
6, I think.
There's it allows you to connect to a time that album reminds you of something. It stirs some kind of emotion. It's a connection to a time long gone. And I think
All
that's
right.
why this hunger is out there.
I agree, Toddy. Okay, but I got to jump in here. If you want to stay somewhere under 2 hours, there is a story I want to tell about Dire Straits and the fact that from my lost all my supporting data, 1978, falling in love with a band that played a song that I'd never heard anything like, Sultans of Swing. To the point years later, gosh, a lot of years later, 1985, that I was at Auburn. Who knew, living in an apartment complex, coincident with Dottie Walker, but had an opportunity to go see Dire Straits. They were going to be in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. And if you don't know about the Fox, it is an exquisite, unbelievable venue that...
It's where David Byrne was.
Exactly, right, which made it even more special. It's an incredible venue. But where I was going was, so back then we didn't have the internet. There wasn't no ability to search on a website and find tickets. You went to the want ads, and I had found a ticket availability in the want ads at the Auburn local newspaper, called the person who held the ticket, and basically was grilled on, why do you appreciate Martin Knopfler? Tell me what you think is great about Martin Knopfler and Dire Straits. It wasn't like a job interview, man. It was like,
Right?
if you want this ticket, we got
Woody,
one, and we're
prove
going to
your
sell
worth,
it.
damn it.
We got one, and we're going to sell it to the person that convinces us they deserve it the most. And by God,
There you go. No problem
I
with
worked
that.
my ass off, and I won that ticket. And then it consisted of, well, we'll meet you at a Pizza Inn on the bypass on 280, and I spent 3 hours with people I'd never known in my life, riding around in a van around Atlanta, having a heck of a good time, only to go to the Fox Theater and see Dire Straits at that point in time, 1985. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and it's one that was enabled only because of music. It's all about the music. I don't know, Toddy. You're just going to have
Well,
to
you
help
have
me
to
here, man.
tip your hat to these people. If they had an extra ticket, they wanted to make sure it went to a deserving person. So look at it this way. At least you connected with 3, 4, however many others it was, Dire Straits fans that appreciated the band on the same level that you did.
Right. Yeah. It was free.
And I'll throw this out when you talk about like appreciating a band. In 1994, you and I and a whole group of people went to see Pink Floyd in Birmingham. Still, to this day, probably one of the most incredible nights of my damn life. It was just, it had built up to this level of excitement that just was unequal. Here's the thing I remember, and I'm not going to name anybody, just keep, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but you,
don't want to
you, I,
incarcerate
and
anybody.
Kate sat on the end of our row, which was to the middle of the aisle thing. But those that, how can I put this, wanted to talk during the concert and basically interrupt our listening pleasure, we pushed their ass way down to the other end.
I do remember that very clearly.
Yeah. And one of them, how can I put this? He's just always reminded me of the Great Pumpkin, and I'll let you figure out which one that is.
I think I probably know, Toddy.
There
All right,
you go.
listen, you got a new music moment that you want to share with us before we log off?
I do, absolutely. Every week we're gonna close with this, and I love it because, like I said, it forces me to go and search what's out there. Now, this album that I'm going to bring up tonight, it was actually released in 2024. But be that as it may, everybody needs to download it, buy a copy, do whatever, but listen. And it is Warren Haynes' Million Voices Whisper. It is an absolutely incredible record. And he's got, I know Derek Truck sits in, who is just an absolute master on slide guitar. You know me, anytime you can mix a slide and a Hammond organ, I'm in. Yeah, but even all that notwithstanding, lyrically, this record is emotional, is tug at your heartstrings. It will literally bring tears to your eyes and all.
Well, the thing, Toddy, is so many different ways we try to describe or define good music, and quality comes into it. I don't care what other path you take, quality is a part of it.
No, no
And
doubt.
this album that you're talking about, quality. And
Yes.
in the interim that we're in, the time frame that we're in, and when you're thinking there's just no good music out there, yeah, there is. This is,
There is, yeah.
Todd has given you a great example of one.
And like I said, it's one of those records that, like I said, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I gotta have a copy of this for my collection. If and for a record to earn that standing, if you will, gotta be
Yeah,
pretty good.
right.
But the first time I heard it,
Toddy certified.
the response was, it was visceral. It was visceral, and I was like, I got to buy this, and it was one that I connected with. And I think Warren Haynes is probably an extremely underrated, undervalued artist. The guy is extremely talented.
So yeah, but so Toddy, you're tying into another topic that I want to get back to on another podcast. Mentioned it earlier, but that control of music and people like Warren Hayes who suffer, in my opinion, from the fact that listeners, casual listeners who just tie into Spotify or Apple Music are steered towards artists that pay them money. I mean, that's as simple as I know how to say it. And
Yeah,
artists like Warren Hayes are submarined and buried, and you have to dig really deep. And when you have people who offer you these opportunities to hear an artist like Todd is doing tonight, please don't sleep on it. Go
no,
listen to you some Warren Hayes.
it and yeah, you'll thank us later. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's because I haven't turned a single person on to it yet that has not called me later and went, "Kudos, man! What an incredible record!" And
Right.
more people need to give it a try. So, and that's it for tonight, man. Enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it, Toddy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no. All right, brother. See you.
See you.